Hello, everybody.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Happy Founders Week. This is exciting, right? I know we've got a bunch of folks joining us on the live stream as well, so welcome to everyone who is joining us virtually. And I couldn't be more excited to be sitting with these two special people to my left. So I'm pretty sure that everyone knows the lovely lady on the end, Wendy Thomas, our newest Wendy's Hall of Fame member. Congratulations, Wendy.
All happened here.
And some of you may not know the gentleman to my left, but a very important part of Wendy's history and your family and your company continues to be Mr. Rodney Wasserstrom. So welcome to
Thank you.
Wendy and Rodney. We're going to thank you for spending some time with us during this very special 50th anniversary Founders Week. And I'm delighted to, I hope, not talk very much and listen much more, as most of the folks here in the room and on the live stream will as well. Just before we get started, to kind of ground us in who everybody is, how many people have been with Wendy's for less than 5 years in the room?
It's more than two.
And how many people have been here more than 20? Yeah. So we really have a wonderful diversity in the company, continue to welcome new folks in, and I think the culture and the heritage and the values of this brand are what attracts so many people, myself included, to join a company that has been around now for 50 years. But so this Friday, November 15th, we will have our official Founders Day. Both of you were there at the opening of this beautiful restaurant on Broad Street. Rodney, I want to start with you. What do you remember about that day?
Well, I think that I probably should start with a little bit earlier than that day. And maybe it was the afternoon or the evening before when I received a call from Dave. And I wouldn't say there was anxiety, but he was heated, and he wanted me to be sure to be at the store before the opening, before the ribbon cutting and so on. He didn't tell me why, but he said, I have some things I want to show you. Now, you have to understand that when we were given the task of doing the design and putting everything together, Dave gave us the parameters, but they were really very sketchy. But there were certain things that were for sure, but they were sketchy. And so, we had this long leash, and we did what we thought was the right thing. Well, Dave found a few things that he didn't think were right. Now, I had the privilege of knowing Dave for a number of years before that, because I had met him at KFC.
Would you talk a little bit about how you did come to meet Dave Thomas, actually, before you get into that part of the story? Absolutely, I want to hear this. Yes. But I realize I may not have given you a proper introduction on that.
It was probably, I think, 1962. Would that be when you're Dan?
Yep.
I think 62. And I would have been 20 then. And our offices were where Nationwide Insurance is now. And I had been working in the company approximately 2 years. I think that my task was I was allowed to run the elevator and do the windows and those kinds of things. But it was one of those things. If you don't do those things, you don't get to
do anything else. Yes.
So it was in the afternoon, and I was doing my task, whatever, in the back of the building, and I was summoned to come up to the front of the building. And my uncle and a sales manager were there, and they were standing there with Dave Thomas. Now, who was Dave Thomas? It was just a name at that point. But they summoned me to come up, and a little bit of the background. I had wanted to go out and do some selling. And my uncles and father had decided I wasn't ready to do that, so I was better at floors, windows, those kinds of things.
Elevators.
So they brought me over they were standing, my uncle and this other gentleman were standing there talking to Dave, and they said, Mr. Thomas has just purchased the Kentucky Fried Chicken stores here in Columbus, and he would like to buy some small items, from us. And we'd like to have you put a schedule together and meet with him at his stores. I said, fine. And
sure.
I shook hands, and that was that. So Dave left, and a very important piece, though. And they said, and we've agreed to some terms with Dave Thomas. And I knew there was something different about this, because we did not give terms to anybody. I mean, we just didn't do that kind of thing. So Dave left, and then I went to see my uncle, and I said, who is this? And they said, well, this gentleman has just bought the Kentucky Fried Chicken stores here in Columbus, and we've agreed to give him some terms. And I said, well, what does that mean? They said, well, he wants credit. I said, okay. And the credit was, you'll go out to his store, and you'll meet he or whoever it is. You'll take an order, you'll bring it back to here. We'll fill the order, we'll deliver it, and you'll go pick up a check right after it's delivered. That was the credit that Dave wanted. And for the first year that I knew Dave, and the first year he had those stores, that is exactly how we operated. They would place an order, would go through the cycle, and then I would go to the office, which was, I think, what Cook and Indianola.
Indianola.
4136 is the address. And I can't say how many hundreds of invoices, and they were all written by hand at that point. And I would go to Gloria, who was his secretary, assistant, and so on, and she would have a check there written for me. And I would go 3 or 4 times a week and pick up the checks. And after a year, I said to her, this isn't necessary any longer. We can just sell you on open account, basically. So
Right.
that's how
That's
started
wonderful.
with Dave.
All right, so then we
And
fast forward to
fast
November
forward
15th,
to-
1969.
And I met Dave then in the afternoon. It was late in the afternoon because I think the opening was like 6 o'clock or so. Maybe 4 o'clock I got there, and Dave said, I want to show you some things. So he takes me around, and he shows me the chairs. Now the chairs were a bentwood, old-fashioned chair. He says,
Uncomfortable, by the way.
uncomfortable, and for sure Dave felt that way, and Dave felt that they weren't the quality that he wanted. Now, there is a difference between the word quality and price. And Dave kept telling us as we put this together, he wanted quality, but at the same time, he says, I have a budget. Never told us what the budget was. He had a budget, and, those types of chairs are very expensive when you buy the real high quality ones. Well, he didn't like the chairs. He said, I want these out of here, and I want some chairs here tomorrow when we open up. I said, I'll work on it and see what I can do. Is there anything else? He said, yes. He said, these Tiffany lamps. And they were not Tiffany lamps, because Tiffany lamps would have been thousands of dollars a piece, but they're Tiffany type. He says, these are a piece of junk. And I'm sure that was the word he used. And they really were not high quality. We went out and we bought kits. And we had some of the spouses of people working in the company put those kits together. And we hung those lamps. And they were probably $100 or so a piece at that time. Well, he didn't like those. And he said the same thing, I want these out of here. I said, I'll work on it. So, after the evening, it was a great evening. It really was a fabulous evening. It was ribbon cutting with Dave's friend, the mayor of Sensenbrenner, I believe at that time, and Wendy and everybody else. And it was really a special moment.
Yeah.
So the next day, the team got together and we said, what are we going to do? And there was really nothing we could do to get him chairs right away. But I went to see Dave then, explained to him what we were going to do. We're going to find a very high quality chair, one that he would be happy with, one that would be proud to sell him. And that we would find Tiffany type lamps that would suit his needs. And we found the chair that we wanted. It was an American-made chair, not an import. And we became, Dave became the largest user of that chair in the world. And on the Tiffany shades, we found a company in German Village by the name of Franklin Art Glass. And went down and talked to Jim Elf, the owner, and he said he would make a sample for us, and he did. And they were absolutely gorgeous. I mean, they were gorgeous. And I don't know how many thousands of those were made, and they were very expensive at the time. They were $500 to $700 a piece.
Yeah.
But Dave was very happy then with the shades and with the chairs, and they looked really, really great.
That's wonderful.
But Dave had always, over the years that I had known him through KFC and so on, he always was a quality person. And we made a few mistakes in misjudging, price and quality and what he would accept and so on. But quality was, it's the recipe. It
the
was
recipe.
everything.
Yes.
And that was the wonderful thing about Dave. I mean, you knew what he wanted, and you shouldn't kid him.
Yeah. Wendy, how well do you remember that day, that time?
Oh, well, to me it was awesome because I got to skip school that day, which was really fun to leave, and got to wear my blue and white dress that my mom made. And I think I just put my hair up. I didn't have to put the pipe cleaners in, which I was really glad because it kind of like poked the brain out. anyways, but it was just really fun. There were so many people there, and you remember the big hamburger they
Absolutely.
made, the big bun, and then of course, I was only 8. I didn't know better, but I thought it was one big patty, but it really wasn't. But I just thought that was so cool that we got to hold it and try to eat it. But the whole night was just magical and just very exciting. And those chairs, my story is on those chairs is my dad's like, you got to have these type of chairs because you don't want your customers to stay too long. You don't want to make it too comfortable. Not like today where people bring in their laptops and camp out. You want them to eat and leave, and the time they get done eating, the chair will be uncomfortable, so they'll move so we can get more customers in. I mean, he was a salesman. He should have worked for you.
Yeah, well,
And those Tiffany lamps were
it would have been
beautiful.
interesting too.
Yeah. So you did the beads too, right?
Yeah, we did the beads. As part
Was
of
that
it, it
your
was an
touch
old-fashioned
or was
thing.
that his?
No, that was not your dad's touch.
I
And it
didn't-
wasn't mine either. It came from the company, but it was someone in our design team that had come up with these. And we went to a place like, I don't know, Hobby Lobby or something like that to find these beads. And we needed to string them. The beads came in bulk, and then the rods, came separately. And we strung them at the first few stores in the office, and people were available to do it. And then it became such a large, task. My wife and a couple of the other cousins had a little business in the basement doing these. And we bought these, in bulk, and they cut them and wrapped them and so on. It was a great thing. And until the time when Wendy's decided not to use the beads any longer. Now, we had an agreement with Wendy's all along that, anything that we had that they decided not to use and so on, that they would take ownership of it. But we thought that in the beads, we would go forward and we would buy a container of these. Now, just think about a container and the size of that and beads.
Like a shipping container?
Yes, a shipping
Oh,
container.
jeez.
And I'm not kidding you, as I remember it, the day that it left port in China, Dave told us they're no longer going to use the beads.
Well, they were a cleaning disaster.
Oh,
Hard
yeah.
to clean. You had to bring the thing up and rinse them in this like pan. Oh my goodness.
Well, the
And then
grease that's
kids
in a
would
restaurant lays right.
Grab them and.
But it
But
was
don't worry, we had them in our house. Did you know
You
that?
still have any?
No, I wish I did.
There's a few around somewhere. But we ate those beads for a long time.
I bet.
I bet.
I bet. There's a lot of
Sorry to
bracelets
bring
that were
that one
made.
up.
Oh my gosh.
So, Rodney, you talked about your uncle, you mentioned your cousin, your wife. So we're celebrating Wendy's 50th anniversary as a company and as a brand. But your family business goes back more than 100 years. Tell us about
1902.
and a number of members of your family are here with us
Sure.
today, and we're happy for them to be
My
with us.
brother Bruce and my cousin Eric, the next generation
Yes.
of Wasserstrom. I'm very fortunate that I have a very large family and a very warm, loving family. And it's just everything to me, and I believe to the rest of the family members. We're very close. And my grandfather had 12 children,
Wow.
9 boys and 3 girls. So my grandmother was a wonderful woman.
I was going to say, it sounds like your
Yes,
grandmother had
yeah.
12 children. I'm just kidding.
And I don't want to get off the subject too much, but the family came from Hungary, and my grandfather was working in the sweatshops in New York. And he had some type of a lung congestion, problem. The doctors told him that he should, go west where the air was clear and et cetera. And he took a horse and a wagon and loaded up with notions and was headed towards, I don't know if it's California, Arizona, but somewhere west. Got as far as Ohio, had some family and friends in the Circleville, Chillicothe area, and then landed in Columbus and sold notions off of that wagon for a while, became a part-time bartender. And then there's a long story, but for another time. But he bought the bar, and right after he bought the bar, Prohibition set in.
Oh, wow.
So what do you do? 12 children and a bar that you can't sell alcohol. So somebody in the family, I don't know who, but one of family members thought, well, we should take and we should sell food at that bar. Well, I think that lasted for one meal. That wasn't our forte. The stores, I think 4 of them were on West Broad Street. Wish we'd held on to that property now with everything that's happening in Franklinton. School teachers, wonderful, wonderful women. And they would help in the business on weekends and after school. And everybody would come in and do something. They would unload trucks. They would dust, wait on customers, whatever it was, even the dentist and the attorney, and et cetera. And then over the years, the family has grown apart in a very loving way. And there's 2 of the root families that are left. And of those, there are 10 of us in the business today.
Huh.
And it's great. We get along.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that is good news. That is good news.
It really is great. And I guess the oldest is 79, and the youngest must be about right at 40 or so.
Yeah.
And spread across the businesses and everybody doing different things.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. Columbus has been very good to us, and Wendy's has been wonderful for us. I mean, I can't sit here and not thank all of you because you're all a part of the Wendy's family. And this is truly a wonderful company. And it all starts, with Dave. And he was a wonderful, wonderful person. And I was very privileged, to know him for the period of time that I did. And he took me under his arms and taught me a few lessons. He and my dad were very close, and I think that they had this thing, you better, take care of Rodney, whatever that means. Did we have a time for a little story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this goes back to the Kentucky Fried Chicken days. And there was an office, like I said, on Indianola and Cook. And I would go in there, 3 or 4 times a week, and I would see Dave, most of the time, and so on. And there was a project that he had given us, and it was actually Eric's father, Alan, and I. And Alan was running the factory at that time. And Dave wanted to make a better breading machine than what Kentucky Fried Chicken was offering its franchisees. And Dave was very innovative in that way. So whether it's the bucket, that was so famous, and many other things, but he wanted to do something with a breading machine, and he asked us to help. And we tried, but we didn't try hard enough. And if I look back, it's one of those things that we should have been better at. But this went on for months and months, and we just couldn't get it right, and we delivered him these machines, they weren't right, and so on and so on. One day I walk in the office, and sitting across the hall from the office is this beautiful, all stainless steel breading machine, and it didn't have a Wasserstrom name on it. I knew there was a problem. So I waited a few minutes, and then Dave called me, and I went in, and we chit-chat for me. He said, "Do you happen to see anything out there in the hallway?" I said, "I did notice that." And I said, "Something where it come from or so." And he said, "Well, you weren't going to do it for me, so I had to show you that I could get it somewhere else." Well, that's a very important lesson in my life that I learned. You never take things for granted.
Yeah.
And when somebody wants something, you take care of it. And you take care of it before they have to wait and ask a second time. That machine never worked, by the way.
But it looked good.
And the whole thing fell by the wayside. But for me in my life, it was wonderful. He taught me a lesson.
Yeah.
I think that he pointed it out for sure.
Absolutely. Does that sound right to you, Wendy?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
nodding your head.
We have a lot of those lessons.
A lot of lessons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was really
Yeah.
known for that.
Yeah,
But looking for innovation too, right, Wendy?
Yeah. Well, and he wanted it done yesterday. If he thought of something, it's like, well, why isn't it done? Right? I mean,
well, from the
he
very
asked you
from
for
the very
something.
beginning, I'd worked with Dave in Kentucky Fried Chicken days, and then he did some things with Arthur Treacher's. And, he brought me into that, and then Dave called me one day and said, "I'm going to go into the hamburger business." And we chatted for a little bit. He said, "I want you to go look at a restaurant that I like that's in Lima, Ohio. It's called Cupie's." So at that time, I said, "Okay." And that Sunday, I took my wife, and we drove to Lima. And I had no idea what I was going to see or anything else. And all I can tell you is that my wife was a couple months pregnant at that time, and she was sick all the way up. And the game plan was to go there, to go inside, and try everything that was on the menu. I mean, that was Dave wanted to come back and tell him what I thought. So we got to the parking lot and so on. It was the typical drive-in. You pull up the speakers and everything else. And Donna couldn't go in. She just couldn't even think about food. So I went inside and I ordered everything.
And make the sacrifice.
Everything. I mean, it wasn't a sacrifice, it turns out. I mean, it was really good. And I could understand immediately why Dave thought this was something very special. So I got back in the car, and I started to tell my wife about how good it was. And she said, I won't even say what she said. But she didn't want to talk about food at all.
Yes.
Well, there was no cell phone at that time, so I couldn't call Dave and tell him how excited I was. But as soon as we got home, I went in the house and I called Dave, and it was Sunday afternoon. He says, come on over. So I went over to his house, and your mom opened the door at that time, and I don't remember if you were running around or the other girls getting. But we went inside and we talked about it. I told him how excited I was, and he was just as excited. And he said, how soon can we get started? And I said, tomorrow.
Yeah.
And literally on Monday, we started to formulate in our company what he wanted. And then over a period of time, he said, we're going to do it in the old Len Emke, Buick building. We took the measurements and so on. But Dave was relentless about the timing. You got to get it done, got to get it done. Well, he hadn't even signed the contract with the contractors or anybody else, but he pushed and pushed, and that was just fine. It worked out great. He had a great team, people. He had Richard Corna, who was the builder, and he came up with some great ideas. And I don't know if anybody knows, but on that first store, there was some piping on the outside of the building that were the typical Wendy's turquoise and white, and it was downspouting from gutters. And that was part of the budgeting process. What do we got to do to cover up this building? And then we had a fellow named Terry Dorgan, who was, I think he was with Hanover Sign Company. He came up. He actually is the one that came up with the logo. And the three of us worked together then and did what Dave needed done. But that was in the spring, and by November, we were open.
What's the craziest thing he ever had you source for Wendy's?
Well, I don't know if it's the craziest, but Dave wanted the hamburger done in a certain way. And it's not that he was going to be there and doing it himself, but he knew what he wanted done, and he wanted it smashed. Is that the word that's used?
Pressed.
Pressed? Okay,
Pressed.
I want to be careful about that. Okay. And, we had an assortment of spatulas, if you may, in the showroom, and we had sent some over with the initial order, and after a few days, someone said, they don't work, and we tried another one, and tried every one that we had, and we tried all of our vendors, brought samples in. There was nothing that we could find that would satisfy Dave, and this was his project. So I don't know, it was a Sunday, and I said, I'm going to go out, and I'm going to see what's out, at retail stores, hardware stores, whatever. I got in the car and I drove around Columbus. I ended up at Zettler Hardware, Town and Country Shopping Center on East Broad Street. And I'm walking through the store. I don't know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something to turn hamburgers with. And I end up in the construction department where the cement trowels are. I said, oh, yes. Oh, yes. So I bought a box of cement trowels. And I called my cousin Alan the next morning. That's Eric's father. And I said, I think I found this spatula and so on. But I need you to cut them off and grind them and so on. So we did that all in a day. I got them to Wendy's. And after that, Wendy's became the largest user of cement trowels in the world. And we did that for a long period of time, buying cement trowels. There's a company called Marshalltown Trowel in Marshalltown, Iowa. And we were their largest user of cement trowels.
So you think about that company, they probably were sitting there saying, all right, so our construction projects are really taking off. There's something going on in America. Little did they know it was hamburgers.
That's an uncle said to me once, he couldn't understand where all the Soda King siphon things were being sold. Now, if you know what Soda King siphons are, but those little CO2 cartridges, and you take those, you pierce them, and you inhale. He couldn't figure out why we were selling all of a sudden in a month out in our showrooms, why all these siphons were disappearing.
Yes.
So
Teenagers everywhere were
that's exactly what it was.
becoming fabulous customers of the
So then
Wasserstrom company.
Did you brand it, like on the handle and stuff? Did you
No,
put
we
Wasserstrom
should have.
Yeah.
We should have charged more than we did. But.
Well, no, you did the right thing.
But along the way of that type of thing, as Wendy's was growing, there was the need for a number of custom items. Something, if it was a drain for inside a pan and you couldn't buy it from a vendor just exactly when it would, we would make something that would fit exactly. And we got a call once from, I don't know if maybe you remember, Hank Sharowski, who was, I think, VP of engineering. And Hank said, I'd like to have breakfast with you. So Alan and I went up and met Hank for breakfast, having no idea really what he wanted. Coming out of that meeting, he praised us and what we were doing, but he said, there's the need for us to get items that are custom, that are special immediately. Like if we think of something in the morning, we'd like to have it in the afternoon or the next day. And with the size of your, you must have got this from Dave.
Yeah, I think so.
But with the size of your enterprise, it's
Sure.
hard to get that out of the factory. So out of that was born a company that we called Quadratech, and it was really just for Wendy's to manufacture custom items. We started with one person and I don't know, a few machines in a very small building we had, and today it's a large enterprise, and we just manufactured a number of special items for the breakfast program.
Wow.
Wow.
So
I
50
didn't
years
know.
later, we're kind of doing the same thing.
Fantastic. We love it.
That's cool. Never knew
It is
that.
cool.
Wow.
Anybody ever wants to see Quadratech, just call them. Glad to take you and show you what we do.
So and those of you that, some of you were at our convention this year, but if you weren't, I would say one of really the highlights of our Supplier Expo was a wonderful, wonderful exhibit that Wasserstrom put together, and it was a history of the Wendy's brand. I mean, maybe even to rival our own. It was really special, and I had the opportunity to speak with both Wendy and Rodney at that exhibit. And Wendy, had some wonderful memories of
yeah.
that relationship, and also just how important all of our supplier partners have been to the growth of the Wendy's brand. Has it been that way since day one?
They're part of the family.
Yep.
I mean, that's how my dad talked about our suppliers. It wasn't the suppliers, it's just part of the family, and they're part of our team. And I mean, we didn't know if you're coming for dinner or breakfast. You never know when they're going to show up. That was just part of our family life, and I can't imagine anyway but doing that. But I love the relationships because I got to know so many people, and being so younger, just hearing the harassment my dad would give Rodney, I really felt for you. Because he
You had to
was.
wait 50 years to tell me that.
Yeah, I did. I was waiting for a special moment, but I mean, he was very demanding, and when he wanted something, he did expect it to be there within the next probably 12 hours. I'll give you a few hours, but why not? I mean, because he's trying to grow this business and try to get more customers in and make the flow, the operation piece work better, and they were the experts, so he just figured. That's how he leaned on you. But he leaned on you
did,
guys
but
for a lot of stuff.
There's nothing wrong with that as long as there's a thank you to go along with it. And
Yeah.
Dave was very good at that. I mean, he was really
Yeah, he was
good
very
at that.
grateful.
Whether
yes.
whether it be he would buy me something or just say thank you or write me a note.
He
I
was
learned a
all
lot.
about
Yeah,
recognition.
he really was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just one of those things we have to do it. I mean,
Right.
it's because he wanted to do it.
Right, and I know that you have a lot of customers of the Wasserstrom company today, but they're not here. So you can tell us why Wendy's has always been your favorite customer.
Well, even we were
'Cause you're on speed dial.
talking. When he was talking about all the vendors at a convention, the vendors would get together and talk about the company, Wendy's or whoever it was at the time, and usually the conversation was not a positive one. It was one of there's this problem and that problem, and nobody appreciates what we're doing, and so on. And when it came to Wendy's, I'm not kidding you, every vendor there was just happy to be there and pleased with the way that they were treated. And that came from Dave. From day one, he always recognized how important the vendors, they really were. And the word partnership is used many times very lightly, but I mean, he really understood what that meant.
Yeah, absolutely.
All except for attorneys, he didn't have a good partnership there.
Or accountants.
Or accountants, that's right. Yeah, I can remember he had signs in his office about both of them.
Uh-oh.
Accountants or attorneys shouldn't run your business.
That's a whole nother subject.
And now, one thing that you both have in common is that, Wendy, obviously you are currently and have been for many years a franchisee of Wendy's and have seen this business from a lot of different perspectives. And Rodney, you were as well at some point in time.
Well, as I say, you live and you learn. It was an experience. So again, Dave and I were pretty close. when I say the early days, this was before, Wendy's went public. And Dave called me and he said, would you come up to the office? And go back a little bit, I had been after Dave to become a franchisee. And he had always said to me in his words, you're a pot and pan salesman, not a franchisee. And you just do what you're supposed to do and so on. But there was a tremendous amount of momentum going on, and franchises being sold. And, you didn't hear about anybody that was struggling. Everybody was just making all this money, and it was just, just great. So I, on behalf of the family, was after Dave to, sell us a franchise. So he calls, and I go up to the office, and we're talking, and he said, this is a confidential conversation. But he said, I have this opportunity for you. And he said, do you still want to be a franchisee? I said, oh, yes. He said, well, I have two very dear friends in Winter Haven, Florida, that I have promised to them that I would be a franchisee with them. And we even have a piece of property that we own. And I'm going to take the company public someday, and I can't be a franchisee and part of that. But if you would like the franchisee for Polk County, Florida, we can work that out. I said, I think that'd be terrific. I need to talk to the family, and I'll get back to you. And he said, well, there's one thing, though. You must ask the two partners whether they want to be part of what you're doing. He says they probably will not want to be, but because I've said to them I would do it. So we worked it out, and asked the two gentlemen if they wanted to be part of, and they said no. What they wanted to do was play euchre or something with Dave, and it had nothing to do with really hamburgers. So that was in 1976, and we opened our first store in Winter Haven, Florida. And then we opened a second store, and Wendy said tremendous momentum at that time, and people buying franchises and selling gobs of hamburgers and Frosties and everything else. And I said, well, we could do that. We can sell pots and pans. We can sell hamburgers and so on. And we had a partner, and it's kind of a lesson in make sure you know what you have when you have a partner. And I think it's different when you talk about your family and their partners and something outside. But we had a gentleman who was a very, very nice man. And he had done some real estate work for us and helped us with some professional leadership things for our company. And we asked him if he wanted to be our operating partner for this, and he said yes. So we brought him on, and I thought that one of the things I should do is take and introduce him to Dave. So I did that, and that didn't go well. It didn't go well at all, and I won't tell you what Dave said, but anyhow, it didn't go well. And there was another opportunity that came up, and Dave called me and he said, would you be interested in another franchise, another city? I said, I think we would be. The family was very happy with what we were doing. So again, went up to the office, and he said, I have this opportunity for you in Phoenix, Arizona. And he said, we have a store that's open, and it's not doing well at all. It's losing money every day. And I said, well, who's the franchisee and so on? And he told me that it was a group of doctors who were very dear to Dave, most of them from Columbus. And I don't know if it was over a poker table they made this deal or whatever it was, but doctors and making hamburgers, that just doesn't work. So it was the same, thing, if you ask these doctors and so on if they want to be part of it and so on. And so we bought the franchise, asked the doctors, and I think 8 of them said no, and 1 said yes. And he was a wonderful guy, and Dr. Lou Cedar. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And he had actually was one of Dave's doctors. So we bought the Phoenix franchise, and we're building stores in Phoenix and moving along, and really we're doing quite well. And I don't know if you remember the name Graydon Webb, but Graydon was a VP of development, I think, or so. And he was flying all over the country and selling franchises, and I knew Graydon and so on. And we're talking about more territory, and you better get this territory now before there isn't any more. It's like the great gold rush.
Right.
This was the great hamburger rush. And Graydon tells us what territories are available. So I went and I talked to Dave, and I said, Dave, there's some territories available. Would you have any problem selling us a franchise? No, if you work it out with Graydon, that's fine with me. So there's a group of us, and we traveled around, and we looked at different cities. And we ended up with Seattle. Well, Seattle-Tacoma was actually the area, and it's 125 miles from one end to the other, which it was huge. I mean, really huge. But we bought that franchise, and that probably was, that was something we should not have done. It was a very tough market. We didn't have the depth of management to move into a market of that size. We didn't have the leadership at the top. And my cousins and I thought that we knew how to do these things. And because you do something really well over here, bending metal or selling pots and pans, doesn't mean that you're going to do all the right things, making hamburgers and marketing and et cetera. And David said all along that whenever you want to sell, the company will buy back your franchise. And I can remember one specifically, there was some type of a meeting at the Hyatt downtown. Dave and I are getting ready to get on the elevator, and he takes his finger and like this on my chest. I'm telling you, your partner is going to take you down. And that was his words. And within the next couple of weeks, we made the decision to sell back to Wendy's, the stores that we had built. And in a 4.5-year period of time, we built 68 stores.
Wow.
So, because we got the golden spatula and the paddle in the back, and those kinds of things, doesn't mean that we were running great stores. And I remember in the negotiation to sell the stores back to Wendy's, and that itself is interesting. As Dave said, I can't sit at the negotiating table, and you and I are friends, and so on. But he said, the leadership team will sit with you. And so it was my cousin Alan and I, and the senior leadership Wendy's, and we had 68 stores, and Wendy's was 70% of our business. Now, I don't know what kind of negotiation you're going to have when you're going to negotiate with somebody that they're 70% of your business.
You may not have had a lot of leverage in that.
But it all worked out just fine. We sold the stores back to Wendy's, and it was a wonderful learning experience. Dave was very kind to us all through it, and everybody at Wendy's was really great. And it afforded us the opportunity to meet an awful lot of nice people being the franchisees.
Absolutely.
It was a great experience.
And Wendy, I think some people might assume that, well, you were just handed a franchise somewhere along the way, but you weren't.
I wish it was that easy with Rodney. I sure didn't get that
Things had
one.
toughened up a little bit by the time you were ready to be a franchisee.
So I became a franchisee back in 1990. I just had our first baby, and we were in South Carolina. And my husband and I, my dad comes in the hospital room, and you know that scene, you're holding the baby, you're kind of crying, and kind of a mess. Anyways, he's like, you guys should be Wendy's franchisees. Just had a baby. What do you think about the baby? So needless to say, I'm like, okay. So the next morning, of course, what's your answer? And I'm like, okay, we talked about it, and okay, we'll check it out. And we met Gordon Teeter in Atlanta and talked to him, and he's like, okay, do you want to go to Atlanta or Dallas? And I'm like, it's pouring down rain in Atlanta, just dark, cloudy. And I'm like, let's go check out Dallas. Fly into Dallas, it's sunny, it's beautiful. And I'm like, I think Dallas is going to be it, because it's going to be sunnier. Weather is really important to our business. So I'm like, I'm going with the weather. So we did end up going to Dallas, even though my dad wanted us to go to Lakeland, Florida, which is in Polk County, I believe. And I'm like, I went to University of Florida. I know a lot of people in Lake County, and that is Lakeland. That is a small town. I'm not going there. I want to be in the big city. So needless to say, we went to Dallas, and my dad said one of the first things he said is, you guys do it, you work it out. I can't give you any money. I'm not helping you out. You go call a bank, I don't want to help you. You got to do it yourself. If you want it, you got it. So that was, had HR, and they had the resources for a new franchisee that we can lean in on. And that's one thing I love about this company is it was still family, and I could go and say, help, we need help on this, and I'm not understanding how to do this. And, we end up, having 5 stores, and he wasn't available at that time. But, of course, I always get the phone calls every morning. And my husband, Paul, didn't. But, how much cash do you have in the bank? What were your sales? What's your labor? And what's your food cost? And it's never like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? How are the kids? Nothing like that. It was always those questions. And I'm like, and finally I just got smart and said, do you need a loan or something? What's going on? You're always asking how much cash I have in the bank. Can I help you out? And one time I did write him a check just to mess around, and it was a big check. And he had it in his wallet actually till he died.
Yeah.
And I am so thankful that he had that check in there. I wrote it, I think it was like $100,000, okay? That was, I had no $100,000. I was just thankful that was still in the wallet and he never cashed it. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that would have been brutal. Like, I don't know how I would explain that one. But, I mean, it was probably dated 1992 or something like that. And he's like, see, I'll help you out, you know. But, he overall, he did the right thing, because I think that's the type of learner I am anyways. I'll just go do it myself, figure it out, and get through it. But I did ask a lot of questions
Yeah.
to a lot of other people, but I think he was proud.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
he would
absolutely.
come in our stores and he's like, yeah, you got this. And so, of course, he'd find one little thing. It's just like, oh, gosh, that one little corner.
Yeah. Well, and
Wendy,
it was,
always look up, look down, you know, and I'm like, shoot.
it's been such a family business for you in really every aspect of the word. And, your mom played such an important role in that as well. And I think sometimes we may gloss over that she was the one that was making sure that kitchen table was ready for Rodney and all of the other partners of the
She was
world
tough,
to
wasn't she?
walk through the kitchen.
Yeah, we won't go there. But yeah.
Okay.
Your mom was a great buyer. I mean, she was tough.
She was tough, though.
I,
she-
I have very fond thoughts and so on.
Yeah. No, my mom was great. She was, the person behind the scenes, and she kept the whole, 5 kids. I mean, that's a lot of kids, especially 4 of them pretty close in age. And then my youngest is younger sibling. She's 6 years younger. So it's a lot of kids, a lot of management. And then my dad's a big kid, too. So there's 6 kids and, managing. And then you never know who was coming home for dinner. I mean, it was like a long-term joke. And she just, okay, no big deal. I'll just set another place setting. And if that was me, I'd be going, okay, just stop at Wendy's, will you? And just pick
Right.
up the whole thing
Right.
of chili. And that's what we're having, chili and baked potatoes. But she was a trooper, and, from making the first dress and to, doing whatever. She made all the uniforms also, all the smocks. Like Rodney was saying, his wife and cousins would all go in the basement. That
Yep.
was my mom on the sewing machine, washing all the uniforms for everyone, because they had to be
It's
just a
amazing.
certain way for my dad. He just wanted this look, very clean-cut look.
Yeah.
And that was very important. So she made the smocks we had little visors or like scarves for our heads, and she did it all, but she never complained, never said one word. That's just the way it rolled. And God bless her, I don't know. We're not made the same way.
That's amazing.
Because I'd be like,
That is amazing, though.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that because I remember your mom calling once, and there was some charity that was building a building in Florida,
Children's
And,
Home Society.
a children's
Home
university.
Society, yeah.
And I think she talked to your dad about it, and she wanted some kitchen equipment. Not to buy, she wanted some kitchen equipment. So I think she talked to your dad, and your dad said, you call. And I remember that call because it was just your dad calling. And I said, whatever you want, just tell me and we'll take care of it. But I think that the thing about Dave that he really taught, that he did, and he lived by, he gave back. And of course, adoption, stands out. But I think hundreds of people that are better off today because of Dave and what he did. I was involved with a couple of charities here, and one of them was the Kidney Foundation, and Dave knew it. And I asked him if he would back a basketball game between, I think it was Boston and Cleveland. And he said, yeah. And by gosh, we filled St. John's Arena, and
Wow.
it was just great. And Dave had a big smile because he was the backer, and he just loved doing it and those kinds of things. But I never said no to him, and he never said no to me. He was great at things. I remember getting a call from him. He said, how soon can you be up here at the office? I said, I'll be there in a half hour. He came up, and our former governor, John Kasich, was sitting there with him. And he said, I want you to meet this young man. I wasn't the young man. He wanted me to meet John. And we sat there for probably an hour and talked life in general and so on. And John and I have become, friends over that
Yeah.
40-year period of time. But Dave was great at introducing to people and putting those connections together, and whether it be the franchisees, and he would, put us together with franchisees.
Yeah.
One of them was Mr. Hartzog, L.S. Hartzog, and he was a very dear elderly gentleman, but oh gosh, he was just terrific at teaching people things.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But my dad, I also like to your family, when they decided to build the cancer hospital at OSU Hospital, I just remember he's like, we can make this happen, call it the James after this Dr. James. And he goes, because I have wonderful suppliers and friends that will help us get that together. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
So that's why they built the James. And I remember hearing my dad on the phone with Rodney, like, we can do this together. And that he was really about being the partnership and being together and working together and making it better for whatever, if it wasn't for the adoption, but for, at that time, the hospital, the cancer hospital. He's like, man, I hope we can build this, raise the money, and then I hope we can burn it someday, because I don't like this cancer stuff. So I'm like, hopefully someday, Dad, we won't have that word see, but, But it was with Rodney and these partners that
Those are a lot of
really built that. And I know my dad probably got the recognition, but in turn, I hope he gave you guys all the
Absolutely.
recognition that you needed and deserved, because if it wasn't partners like these guys, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of things, and especially at the Dayton's Foundation for Adoption. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be where we are. We'd be struggling, but we'd be there. But
Yep.
we're a lot further in helping these children find their homes.
Well, it's the right thing to do. I remember there was a meeting, it was here in Columbus somewhere, and it was Dave and Len Emke and Danny Thomas. And this was to raise money for St. Jude's.
St.
Yep.
Jude.
But
Danny
you didn't want
Thomas
to
was a
you didn't
famous
want to
guy for
stand
you
too
young
close
people.
to what was going on, because it was too easy then for Dave or Len Emke or Danny Thomas, to get you. But it was a fun night, and they raised a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you really didn't mind, you complained, but you really didn't mind doing it, because it was going to a
Sure,
great
it's all a
cause,
great
and Dave
cause.
was really into it. And I don't think there was anything that he ever was into that I wouldn't approve of. And I don't know why that reminds me of, we're designing the first store, going around the circles here. And we take the design to Dave to show him, and he gets upset. He said, I don't like this. He's pointing at this. And we had drawn a cigarette machine into the first store's drawing. So how life changes. And I think Dave was a smoker, and I think that's why we put that
Before
machine
then,
in there at
yeah.
the time. And then there was a time, and
Yeah.
so
And
was
he
one of the
didn't
first-
want it. He
No,
did not want that there.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, ahead of his time on that.
Yeah.
All right, so I have one more question for each of you, and then I'd love to take a couple of questions from the group here. And I'll give you an option. Either what's most surprising to you about Wendy's today, thinking back on our 50 years, or do you have a prediction for the next 50 years?
Go ahead, I'll mop up.
So my prediction for the next 50 years, one, I won't be here. Bummer. I think we're going to be just the amazing brand that we started at 1969 at 257 East Broad Street. I think we're going to still serve quality, fresh, never frozen hamburgers made to order. And I think we'll probably talk about that more in the future, about how you can come into a Wendy's, because I'm really picky. I only like ketchup, tomato, and lettuce on my single. And I hate mustard. So,
Me too.
But I think, you too?
Well,
Oh.
we can go out to eat, the three of us.
But I think in our future, we're going to see more of that. And I think we're going to still see a lot of quality. And I think we'll just keep growing this brand the right way.
Absolutely.
And we'll keep serving one customer at a time. Even if it's by mobile or by spaceship, I don't know. But spaceships, I'm all for that. I'm ready for our spaceships. I can get home faster.
Yeah.
Or get to my stores quicker, too, without
That's right.
people in my way.
That's right.
So,
Absolutely. How about you, Rodney?
Well, I think, Wendy's has had its ups and downs, but it's stayed true to the core, and that's quality. And I believe the same way as Wendy does. As long as Wendy's stays with that quality, and it's not just the product, it's the people. It's the people here in Columbus, it's the people in the stores, it's the franchisees. Wendy's will be just fine.
Yeah.
They really will be. And I think that the best of times are yet ahead of us.
Wonderful, and great suppliers, so we will
And
be
great
sure that we
suppliers.
don't
For
forget
sure.
about that important part of the family. All right, do we have a couple of questions from the group? Oh, I see one back there.
This question is, I guess, for Wendy. With the November 15th opening, that close to the holidays, so was that first Thanksgiving Wendy's meal Wendy's, or was it an actual Thanksgiving meal?
That's a great question.
Let me think. I think that night was it for me that I remember. I remember going there before the store was open, but I don't really remember eating. I think a Frosty. I take that back. We did play with that machine. But yeah, that was, you just don't even know. That was like the bomb. I thought I landed on the moon because that's when I think landed on the moon that year
that's
too,
right.
around that same time.
That's right.
And, but it was, God, that hamburger was, I could still taste it.
Yeah.
So I was only 8 and I
Right.
still remember what a hamburger
great.
tastes like.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. It's
Yeah.
Thanksgiving every day now.
Was the timing of November just coincidental? Was that just when the store, the restaurant was ready to open, or was that
We
intentional?
got the equipment
Yeah.
in finally.
It was, if we hadn't been so slow, it would have been October.
It would have been September if he would have hurried up. No, I'm just kidding. He was getting the beads ready. That was what the problem was.
That's great. Coley, we got a question for you.
Well, first of all, thank you both for being here. And Randy, I've read that Dave used to say he didn't necessarily care about being the biggest, but he wanted to be the best. But I'm curious, as you were talking early days, was there a number that you all talked about in terms of how big you thought the Wendy's business could become? Like, if he was sitting here today and talking about 6,700 restaurants and global expansion, do you think Dave would be surprised, or what did you talk about in those early days?
Well, we never talked about this type of growth. But when Dave took those 4 Kentucky Fried Chicken stores that were struggling and ready for bankruptcy, and they were selling everything but chicken, I will never forget walking into the store with Dave. He said, I'm going to meet you there, and I'm going to show you what I want to do. And we go in, there's candy bars on the counter, there's a rack that's got potato chips, and he says, they've got everything here except for fried chicken. And it was a lesson, again, we learned we're in the chicken business, we're not in the candy business, the
Right.
potato chip business, and so we got to clean up these stores, and this is what we want to do, and so on. But I watched what he did with those 4, and then quickly took that up, I think, to 16 or 18 stores. I knew that he had the ability to do this when he brought us into Wendy's. And we were excited from the very first store that there were going to be multiple stores. But in our wildest imagination, we never, thought there was going to be 6,700 stores, let alone, 10,000 or whatever there's going to be, in the future.
I know my dad, he really just was planning on 5 stores because he wanted us 5 children to have a job. And he knew probably we wouldn't all work well together in one store. So, which I think he had a good point. Because my store would have been the best. So I can say that because they're not here. So. But I think it was just a lot of people from his KFC and Arthur Treacher's and just being in the restaurant industry that reached out to him and went to the restaurant and said, I really like what you're doing. I like your concept. And my dad had a big heart. He loved people. Because we're in the people business. And he would just say, well, let us get this going first, and then we'll make an opportunity. He just wanted everyone. He always said, make the pie, but make the pie big so everyone gets a slice. And that was what he was about, and making everything right, and working with people. He just loved people, so I think that's how he grew. I think he was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to grow. But as long as you're going to do it right. And he did have his standards, that's for sure.
Yep, do it the right way.
Quality products, quality people, and you got to have systems. He was all about training, and I can go on about that, but he loved his training, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Which is great.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Just a quick one from the supplier. How did you make the hamburgers square when you first started? Because when you take a hamburger and smash it or press it, it doesn't
We
usually
had a
turn
machine.
square. So early days, there was a
And it was
machine.
called Holomatic. And you would take, the ground beef and put it in the hopper, and out the bottom would come the square patty.
Really, it's because we don't cut corn.
I know
Oh,
why.
that's-
I didn't know, I always knew why, I didn't know how.
That's the why, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. How long did we patty in the restaurant?
Oh my gosh, would you say,
It was into the hundreds of stores.
Yeah,
yeah,
It was into the hundreds of stores, yeah.
a long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was probably the best news ever when the supplier started bringing it to
Bringing
you
it
without
already
doing that.
patted,
And then
yeah.
when we had to do the chicken and bread it and all that.
As we're
That was
sitting there,
good.
I'm hungrier and hungrier. I want my double with cheese
We didn't
and onion.
feed you. All right, so that's a great last question. Is that your favorite menu? What's your
Double
favorite?
cheese with onion,
Double cheese, onion, no mustard.
no mustard. You got
French
it.
fries?
Yeah, I do the fries.
How about a cookie?
No, I don't do the cookie, but
How about the birthday cake frosty?
Yeah, and is
Oh.
Vanilla Frosty wonderful or an abomination?
it's fabulous. It's
Fabulous.
not wonderful, it's fabulous. And with coffee, it is really great.
What about,
Excellent.
what about the taco salad or the chili?
I
you wanna
actually
put
like the
that-
taco salad.
Okay.
I'm a salad guy. I like
Yeah,
salads.
so-
And I think Wendy's has got some great salads right now.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Absolutely.
Made fresh every day. Did you
Every
know that?
day, every morning. How about you, Wendy? What do you order when you go into your restaurants?
Oh, one of each. No, I go with the single, but I've been in the taco salad craze right now. But then it was spicy chicken a couple weeks ago.
Yep,
I'm there too much, I guess. Not really. I'm in my stores too much.
not at all, not at all.
I love everything. So,
Well, it is a wonderful time to be part of Wendy's. I couldn't be more grateful for both of you for being here. Can you all join me in thanking Rodney and Wendy for being with us today?
Thank you.
This was a lot of fun. This was really
really
a lot
was
of
a lot of
fun,
fun.
and the stories could go on for forever. We've still got a few more days this week of Founders Week. Encourage you to participate in everything that we have going on. We'll wrap it up on Friday with our employee meeting, and don't forget to dress like Dave on Friday with your white shirt and your red tie.